Tutorial Podcast, a podcast offering discussions and tutorials on nerdy subjects for people who aren't necessarily nerdy themselves. With you today, myself is Nerdy George, and with me here today, the Maven of Masks, my mom.
I am the Maven of Masks. I've got on the sewing machine for you one with the Curious George fabric. I
always get compliments on my masks. I really do. Everyone always.
You've got some unique ones.
Oh yeah, no.
You've got Care Bears.
I got Care Bear ones.
Did you wear Care Bears?
Yes, I did, and I had a lot of comments on it too.
Good or bad?
People were very kind of curious about it. It's like, what's up with the Care Bears? It was like,
it was Valentine's
Day. Yeah. So it finally happened. WandaVision ended last night, all 9 episodes of it. And we wanted to talk about it because not only do we get the chance to talk about a cool Marvel series, but coming up next on Disney Plus is going to be the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which should be another series of stuff. And really, like, WandaVision really does kick off the Phase 4 of the MCU now.
I'm really curious about WandaVision because I've had several friends, of course, post on Facebook, but also, tell me that it's just this cool send up of 60s sitcoms. I'm a child of the 60s, 60s sitcoms and modern stuff.
So having watched it, if you love your sitcoms from the 60s and all throughout over the ages here, like, it's a literal send up of a lot of that.
Do they do Mr. Ed?
No, they don't do it. They don't do a Mr. Ed, but again, like, Mr.
Ed's the best.
Keep in mind, like, the first couple episodes are in black and white.
Well, and actually, for those of us who remember, things like Bewitched were originally in black and white and then moved to color. Hogan's Heroes was in black and white and then moved to color. Mm-hmm. I don't imagine they did Hogan's Heroes. That would totally sell your father. No. Too bad.
Again, they're all...
something wrong about a Nazi prisoner camp, right?
Yeah, but, like, to keep in mind that it also was, like, as a child, not fully understanding the full gravity of the details, kind of understanding. Like, I understood they were in, like, a Nazi camp, but it was World War II. But, like, it's a very silly sort of thing at the end of the day. I mean, like...
It's very silly, but remember at the time it was only 20 years before. Yeah. And so it actually kind of a sensitive subject. I'm curious to see how they balance today's perception of race with the 60s perception of race, because with the exception of things like the Bill Cosby show, which there was a Bill Cosby show in the 60s that had him as an athletic coach. Really, TV was very white.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to how they do that. Do they do Gilligan's Island?
No.
Oh my gosh.
They're all family sitcoms.
Oh, okay.
So, like,
Bewitched?
So it's like Bewitched, Dick Van Dyke,
I Dream of Jeannie,
Brady Bunch.
Oh, okay.
So, like,
Marsha.
Yep. So again, if you like that, I mean, like, it's an interesting take here. So, having watched it here, like, it's moving things along in an interesting way, developing characters. What we have to remember, though, is that, like, we've been waiting on Phase 4 since Spider-Man at this point. So, the way the MCU has kind of broken itself up is based off their Avenger movies. So, when you finally got to the first Avengers movie back in 2012, that was what they considered the end of Phase 1. So, 2008 through 2012, 2013. And then you had Phase 2, which was 2013 until 2015 with Age of Ultron, the second Avengers movie. And then Phase 3 was the Infinity War and Endgame. So that comprised all of Phase 3.
Okay, so of what's been out there so far, what's your favorite?
My favorite piece?
Yeah.
See, I've always been a big fan of Doctor Strange because, like, it's the guy you go to when you need something that's magical and in kind of an odd sort of sense here, but, like, he doesn't always play a huge role in everything else that's happening. It's very much like the go-to guy, you know.
He's
like
the added piece.
Yeah, he's a cool added piece that when something magical happens.
Someone referred to him as MacGyver. I'm like, no, you got that totally wrong.
No. Again, Doctor Strange is just like a magic guy. You know, he's your classic wizard at the end of the day, minus the staff and the cool hat.
but he has sort of a cool sort of Gandalf philosophy too.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, and I think after that though, I've had a lot of fun with this newer take on Thor and Thor Ragnarok. Was a really fun.
The fat Thor.
Oh no, not Endgame Thor being a fat Thor. No,
sorry.
Still a very popular comic.
Ragnarok was on television the other day, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's a fun kind of campy romp. I really appreciated the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and then and
who doesn't love an evil brother?
Mm-hmm.
Loki is
oh yeah,
a fun evil brother because he's not.
I mean, he's an evil brother, but I mean, like
he's more of a malcontent than he is evil.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that.
He wants to be chaos, but he doesn't really have.
He has the chops for it, but he's not good at it.
Yeah.
Like he wants to rule the world, but he doesn't really quite know how to get there.
No, I think he just really wants to screw it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the god of tricks and pranks.
Yeah.
After that, again, I love Captain America: Winter Soldier because it's just that cool spy sort of thing going on there, and huge stretchage of this huge.
I'm a fan of Civil War.
I like Civil War too a lot too because again, I find that it kind of has this. It's one of the movies in which I really do think would have been better as an Avenger movie, but I'm kind of glad because we don't have certain characters in there that would kind of not necessarily add or determine. Like having the Hulk and Thor in there would kind of make it more tricky, I think, to have a Civil War.
I liked Civil War because I thought it asked questions that were worth asking.
Yeah, and I think the Marvel movies have done a really good job of playing that in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But again, probably one of my favorites is still going to be Black Panther.
I love Black Panther.
I
love the idea of a sort of an alternate universe.
Well, I just love the way everything looks. I love the music. Visually it's very. What I love about the music is that the director for it and both the director and the person who scored the music, the guy who scored the music knew almost a year and a half to 2 years before the movie ever came out that they were doing this. And so he went and researched all this African music and all these instruments and all this other stuff here, and was able to create music that was very kind of authentic to the world at the end of the day, intentionally.
That movie just has such a unique feel because it really does take me to
a world outside of that we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and mind you, I've been to a number of parts of Africa. I've been to Zimbabwe and Zambia and South Africa and Uganda, and then also Northern Africa, Egypt, and Morocco. And I have a real appreciation for African art. I have some.
Mm-hmm.
I have an awesome set of pewter panthers, leopards, that are quite large. So to see the richness of that culture, which visually when you're there is just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
To see the richness of that culture emphasized and highlighted was really. I think they did a really good job of really portraying it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how to put to words what I'm trying to.
It's like a celebration of like black culture, and it really did feel like it was like and again a majority African American to African cast,
Mm-hmm.
And directed by another a very prominent African American director here as well, and again and it really does show like everyone knew that hey, we get one chance at this, guys, let's just make it count.
Oh, it's well done.
Oh yeah.
And I like the way that they featured Black Panther in Endgame
and in Infinity War.
Yeah,
because again, he's basically there's Infinity War, and then his portrayal in Endgame. It's really a shame that particular actor died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then I'm actually really interested to see what happens with Captain Marvel too.
Yeah.
because again, I kind of grew up on the 80s, 90s version of Captain Marvel, and while I appreciate this new version of Captain Marvel, I'm curious to see where it goes to next. So
you like the older version better?
No, I actually like this newer version better because I think it actually treats the character much better than it did the older version. But it's an interesting change that the character has had, and I wonder if they'll ever bring up some of her older plots and other older material at the end of the day, because there's a wealth of material, and she's been in a lot of older stuff well into the past, but it's never been. But I wonder whether they want to bring up some of that tragic history from before at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see where she is, and I'm curious. I mean, just kind of curious to see what she does at the end of the day. But we're talking about Wanda, who in and of herself is a weird thing. So let's set the stage for you first. So, like I said before, we haven't seen a real major Marvel thing since 2019's Spiderman Far From Home, which basically takes place a couple weeks or maybe 2 or 3 months after what everyone's kind of either calling the blip or the snap, where everyone kind of returned.
Yep.
And sets kind of the world into chaos where, like, well, 50% of your population just came back after 5 years, and everyone's kind of like, what?
And they didn't age.
They didn't age, no. Which is fair.
But I mean, it seems like you had an older brother and older sister who's like now way older.
Yep.
Or you now younger than you. You might have had an older sibling that's now younger than you.
Well, again, like Ant-Man's daughter, who would have been just like, I think was just turning 10, is now, or 10 or 11, was now 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And a lot older looking than what she was beforehand, but I mean, that's fine. You've got other characters that, that, again, I mean, like, you have, like, Peter Parker here, who, like, basically, like, lost 5 whole years of his life, and so other kids that were in his class are now, like, much older than him, which is a point in one of the movies here. Again, I mean, like,
are we drinking age?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the movie actually asked that question. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting.
And it's also kind of interesting. Do you put in your date of birth, and do you check a box that says I was snapped or blinked at that point?
Yeah.
So, when we get to the case of, now again, mind you, we've had the Black Widow, which has kind of been waiting in the wing here since 2000.
Is it out?
Not yet, no. They're aiming for the summer of 2021 now. The film has been fully wrapped up and fully done here since the beginning. So it's kind of since the spring of 2020, with the intention of releasing it in the summer of 2020 here. And then we had this pandemic, I think it was called, that kind of happened around us. And so as a result, they kept pushing it back and back. Eventually, Wonder Woman 1984, which was also set to come out in the summer, eventually they just said, F it, we're just going to push it in December here now.
How did it do? Do we know yet?
Not well.
Wasn't a great movie.
No, I think a lot of it was just, a lot of people heard the backlash on it. It was just...
Didn't watch it.
Yeah, and nothing really beats watching something in a movie theater as well. I mean, like, remember when
especially these kinds of movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they have all the special effects that really, on a small screen, are small.
Yeah.
And
on a big screen, they're just, like, so lifelike, and you get caught up in the moment. Again,
they were designed to be seen that way.
Mm-hmm. Again, I will forever remember watching The Dark Knight with my friends on opening day back in 2012, or 2012 or earlier than that. I forget when The Dark Knight came out.
Yeah.
Or 2008, excuse me. So 2008, 2009. I remember watching that movie with my friends in a movie theater, and the scene where the Joker slams the guy's head into a pencil and makes it disappear, a number of us in the crowd were just, like, clapping, like, wow! And we're all just in a shock and awe sort of thing here. Like again, like, it's really hard to admit when you, like... So and again, like...
You laugh when other people laugh, you cheer when other people cheer.
Yeah, and you kind of get overwhelmed by it here. I mean, the best example I can think of, and I don't have a good analogy for this, is going to be because I wasn't there for it, but you can probably speak to it here, was you watched Star Wars Empire Strikes Back in theaters, I presumed.
Oh, we actually went to L.A. because it wasn't in broad release.
Mm-hmm.
We actually went to L.A. and saw it at Mann's Chinese Theater.
Ooh.
And waited in line. This was in the old days when you couldn't advance buy tickets. This would have been in 1976, 77, 77?
77. So the original one came out in 77, 78. So this one
77.
So yeah, so this would have been like 1980.
Oh, okay. Well, I was talking about the original Star Wars.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. The original Star Wars drove down to L.A.
Mm-hmm.
to see it at Mann's Chinese Theater. There was a Lions across the street. I was not of drinking age. But the person I was with was. And the two of us took turns standing in line
Mm-hmm.
while drinking strawberry margaritas because we stood in line for like 3 hours. Because it wasn't and the line literally was a Blockbuster. It wrapped around the block. But I remember seeing and we were cheering.
Yeah,
and it's a thing.
Absolutely.
To see the bar scene on the big screen.
See all these different
For the first time.
To see all these different aliens and everything.
For
I
the
can't
first
imagine.
time, yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah, but again, I mean, it's one of those cases where, like, you hear, again, I just can't imagine what it was like to be in the theater when, like, when Darth Vader mentions, no, I am your father. And everyone just, it's like audible gasps.
Yeah, we were all taken aback.
Yeah. Just audible, just like loud, like.
Because they kept that secret really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something even people you knew who had seen it wouldn't leak. They'd say, oh, no, you just have to see it.
No, yeah. Not now. Now people are actively going out and spoiling.
Yeah.
Which is famously when the later Harry Potter books came out.
Yeah.
Especially 6 and number 7 here. Some of them got released. Some of the transcripts for it got released early online, and so people went to because Harry Potter was a big deal. So people would wait to buy the book.
Yeah.
And people would go, and there would be people that would drive by or go to people in line and start whispering literal secrets or spoilers from the books.
Why would you do that?
It's so mean.
It's mean.
It's like talking about, to me, it's like talking about Death Note and mentioning stuff that happens in Death Note because it's a great manga and it's a great anime, but like you don't spoil the twists and turns in that because they're super interesting and relevant to the plot.
Yep.
So. But after the blink of the snap, but again, so with the case of Black Widow, they really want to release that in theaters because that's a big tentpole movie.
Yeah.
And potentially the last time we'll ever get to see Scarlett Johansson in a Marvel movie, most likely, outside of flashbacks.
Why?
Well, remember, her character died in Endgame.
That's true.
So, outside of either flashbacks or cameos in other movies here, which is kind of the same way they plan on, I think, using Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. I mean, like, it would be
same question, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see if Chris Evans comes back as the old man, Captain America, Captain Rogers.
Yeah.
I love this great version of this headcanon online. Is that after Endgame, or after the events of Endgame, and he goes back in time and returns all the stones. He goes back to be with Peggy Carter in 1950, and then actually becomes Mr. Rogers.
Oh.
It spends the next, 50 years, as this prophetic sort of, childhood, mainstay for the next, 50 some odd years until he retires.
Yeah.
That again, nobody. Again, that's a wonderful headcanon at the end of the day. It's not because everyone used to think that Fred Rogers was was some sort of military sniper or something. And no, he was just a guy who went to he
was a minister.
Yeah, guy became a minister and realized that there really wasn't anything that was talking to children in a realistic light at all.
Well, some of it is his own relationship with his child.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And his own insecurities in life and stuff like that. So, so where did we leave off at the end of the day here? So
who is Wanda?
Oh yeah. So
I work with somebody named Wanda.
So in the Marvel universe, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe here, and actually to speak about Wanda is actually to speak about an interesting topic that has been kind of hanging out there a little bit. Is that we've never seen the X-Men in the MCU at all, and there is a reason for that. Technically,
what is the reason?
So, if we to talk about this though, is to kind of go back to the.
I don't want a crossover, by the way. I think they're such completely different
characters.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't think they work well together.
Well, so what originally happened was that back in the 90s, Marvel wasn't actually in a very good space at all. By 1996, 1997, they actually had to file for bankruptcy. Ooh. And during this time, actually in the 90s, they started selling off the film and TV rights to other people. It's how we got a number of different movies that came out during this period here. So we had X-Men that came out in 2000. You have Spider-Man or X-Men that got sold to Fox at the end of the day. In 2000, came out with their own movie in 2000. They'd been releasing other animated features for a while here now on both
the cartoons.
Cartoons, and then you had Spider-Man that got sold to Sony. The film rights got sold to Sony, and then you had the Hulk, which got sold to Paramount, or either Paramount or Universal. I can't remember which. I think it was Universal actually. And so you had, and this was a way that Marvel could, try to get money to stay solvent during this time. And so, one of the big deals was that when they sold the rights to the X-Men, the film rights and television rights to Fox for X-Men, one of the things they sold along with it was the rights to mutants. And mutants, and again, we have to remember is that while mutants are a interesting class of heroes at the end of the day, their powers come just basically from being born. So there's initially was this kind of racial or specious sort of tone to them that was kind of mirror or allegory as to what would be racial tensions that were here in America during that time, during the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s as well. But really, what Marvel did was they just wanted to make heroes where it was like, how did they get their powers? Well, they were just born with it.
Yeah.
So, rather than trying to come up with a unique sort of rationale or reason for how they got their powers and such. But again, the entire concept of mutants got sold to Fox. So any character that was a mutant technically could be in a X-Men film or some sort of mutant-based property from the X-Men. So that meant that a lot of the characters that happened in the Marvel continuity couldn't be there. So you couldn't have a Professor X, Wolverine. There's some characters that were technically mutants, and one of those sets of characters was Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff, better known as the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
Okay. And
so these were characters that couldn't really be couldn't really be in the MCU universe because they were technically mutants at the end of the day. Now, come 2006, they're starting pre-production on their own movie series at this point here, which is Iron Man, which again takes off as gangbusters. Yeah. And I don't think at any particular time that they consider including mutants into their world at all, initially at least. And there's actually kind of an interesting tangential sort of thing that happens along here too later on. But obviously the Marvel Universe, a very big deal. And then we get to 2009 in which we have Disney who buys out Marvel for $4 billion.
Yeah. And
becomes, this giant tentpole of a series and organization. So what ends up happening though is that again, the mutant characters being owned by Fox at this point means that you can't include any of it in there. But to really tell adventure stories, if you're going to have Vision at any particular point, you kind of have to include Wanda and you have to include Pietro or Peter at the end of the day here as well, because both these characters are are very much a part of the Avengers. They've been mainstays for the Avengers for a very long time. And Wanda and Vision have notoriously had a relationship with each other. Dating back to the comics for years. They even had children at one point, which we'll talk about here in a second.
Okay.
So 2015, the way they were able to get Wanda and Pietro in there was just to say that they were humans that were advanced by the Mind Stone at the end of the day. So those pesky reality stones.
So they weren't mutants. They were humans.
They were humans. Yeah, they were altered by the Mind Stone.
There's whole philosophies about the fact that we all have this ability. It's just a matter of how much you can activate your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So it works for me.
And it's interesting how many heroes now have actually been, our powers that come from different stones at the end of the day. So again, when we look at Captain America here. Like Captain America was really a response to the Space Stone, the Tesseract being out there, and then even Captain Marvel, at a certain point here, was also primarily about the fact that she was given her powers by the Space Stone.
Yeah.
And then we look at Wanda and we look at Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch here. Their powers were given to them by the Mind Stone at the end of the day. It's the same way with Vision, which is, again, a very nice nod at the end of the day that both Vision and Wanda, two beings that their powers were given to them by the Mind Stone, is what got them together at the end of the day, too. So I thought that was a nice little coincidence.
Yeah.
So by the time we get to 2015 here, one of the things you have to kind of know about Marvel here is that when Disney bought Marvel, they split up the two major factions of the Marvel system. So you had the film and television side that was led by a guy named Kevin Feige, who is still kind of leading it here. Mm-hmm. And then you had the CEO of Marvel, which was this seclusive, very reclusive kind of guy at the end of the day. And on the comic book side, since they started coming out with their own movies here in 2008, prior to that to 2006, they were actually trying to de-emphasize mutants in the comic books for almost a decade because they didn't have the rights for them. So at the end of the day here, why would we want to prop up the mutant characters? Because we're never going to get to make movies out of them.
We can't use them.
Yeah, we can't. Well, not that we can't use them. The comic book side owns all these characters. They can use them however way they want.
Okay.
But we can't make TV shows or movies out of them, so let's focus on things we can make stuff out of. Which led to a very interesting event called House of M, which we'll talk about here in a little bit when we talk about Wanda. And House of M really did kind of reset the mutants in this world at the end of the day, in a way that was very negative toward mutants. It basically minimized the amount of mutants that were in the world. And as a result of this, the comic book side was trying to push Inhumans. So Inhumans are these humans that, when exposed to a special gas, gain superpowers.
That makes them inhuman?
They're these originally or later on they were explained to be do you remember the green people from Captain Marvel?
Yes.
So the Skrulls,
Nebula.
Not Nebula, she's blue,
okay.
But she's
blue, okay.
Yeah, so these are the green guys that shape changed and everything.
Oh, I do remember them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in classic Marvel comic books here, they're bad guys.
Yeah.
In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're kind of like outcast sort of refugees.
Yeah.
Which I like. I kind of like.
And I actually like the way that story was told.
Yeah.
Because they're bad guys until she learns they're really not.
Yeah. And they're what they're doing, now makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
But we get to the Marvel continuity, though. They're bad guys, and they were genetically altering, or is it Skrulls or? No, actually, excuse me. My apologies. I'm forgetting the wrong people here. No, it was the blue people from Captain Marvel.
Okay.
Who we thought were the good guys,
Oh, okay, and they give her suit, and then she changes.
So
the suit colors.
Yeah, I'm so drawn on
okay.
like right now.
Okay.
I can't. So they were experimenting with humans as potential slaves.
Rob Lowe.
Yeah. And so this gas is basically like a rite of passage. So you turn like 15 and you go into this gas and you get superpowers. And they differ. They're very, again, at the end of the day, they're legally distinct from mutants but not really, because they have a choice of getting superpowers and stuff. They're led by a guy
It's given to them as opposed to being born with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, like, you don't really get to choose what your superpowers are. They're just whatever happens to you. It was a big focus of season 1 and season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that was on on ABC.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of that series for a while. And they even had a TV series called Inhumans that was out for a bit. Now, it was interesting to say the least, because Inhumans themselves are weird. Their leader is a guy that can't talk, because if he talks, his voice is so strong it kills people. So he does.
That's a tough skill in a leader. Leaders are supposed to be able to persuade.
Yeah, so he does a lot of stuff with, he talks a lot with sign language and motions. He has something on his head that lets him kind of speak telepathically with some of his other Inhumans. Yeah. His wife's special power is her hair moves.
Interesting.
She's got like this carpet, she's got like this floor length, hair that, works like vines at the end of the day. I guess is the best way to describe it.
Cool.
The way they travel is by a dog that teleports.
A dog?
Yeah, a dog that I forgot. It's kind of like a pit bull, or not a pit bull. Like what's the one where like it's kind of like you hit a dog with a shovel in the face.
Pug or
not a pug? No. It's one of those like
bulldog.
Yeah, kind of like a bulldog. Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like a bulldog, but it's the size of my desk, and my desk is about 6 foot tall. Is about 6 foot long.
It's a big desk.
It's the size of a big desk, and it transports them around the world. That's how they get around. But yeah, they were trying to really push Inhumans, and a number of events in the Marvel comic books actually was trying to de-emphasize and actually get rid of mutants in a lot of ways. This is also the same storyline where we saw a number of major key characters kind of get killed at the end of the day. This includes Wolverine, Cyclops, Professor X. A number of other heroes were either depowered or completely gone, including a lot of very popular children or teenage mutant characters.
Huh.
We have to remember that originally X-Men's the school was based off of for students or teenagers that had mutant powers, and they would go to a safe place to go do it. And eventually that's continued well over the time, where you have lots of teenage mutants that have gone to the school here over time. I mean, there's lots of different characters.
I actually liked that concept.
Yeah, it's like Hogwarts, but for superpowers.
It gives people a chance to be with other people who can accept them and not be threatened by them.
Yeah, or at least in a place that if you were a dangerous sort of thing here, at a dangerous power, you could learn to control it, or you would have people around you that would help you through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
I like that concept.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, since then they've also been moved around a lot. They've been the Avengers versus X-Men, and it's been a rather unfortunate turn of events for a lot of the mutants. Eventually this head of Marvel got ousted because he wasn't playing nice with Disney, and he's since exited the picture at this point. And mutants have started. Mutants, again, it's one of these weird things where like you can't really get rid of mutants at the end of the day. Like there's no way you're ever going to replace popularity of Wolverine, Cyclops, Professor X, Magneto, like all these really key characters.
Is part of Wolverine's popularity that he was so well personified by Hugh Jackson?
Not only just Hugh Jackson, I think a lot of this also had to do with the early 2000s version of the character that was on Fox.
Ah, okay.
So a lot of it was like this loner kind of guy that's like super strong and is basically an unstoppable killing machine. And there was this thing I think called 90s cool, that you have to kind of presume that like things were cool for character. It was these were our characters. They're cool because they're 90s and they're buff and they're hard and they're edgy and they're rude, but they're not really heroic. They're heroic because we say they're heroic. It's like,
but I like the concept of 90s cool because like nobody ever says anything from the 80s is cool.
No, I mean, like, again, we look back to it now again. I mean, like, we look at characters like Blade, who's this, Samuel, or not Samuel L. Jackson, but Wesley Snipes, all dressed in black leather, vampire hunter with a samurai with a katana at the end of the day. It's kind of like,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool idea, but like it's 90s cool was pushed really, really hard for characters that were not really heroic. Like, this is also where we got a lot more of the Punisher, being cool. You have Spawn and a lot of other characters which are not necessarily heroic characters, but they're portrayed as the heroes in a show, in a comic book, TV show, or movie. Not and not anti-hero either. Anti-hero being the notion of that. That they're heroic, but not in the typical ways you would be heroic, kind of way.
Yeah.
So, and now actually, so as we fast forward here back to the present here now, in 2019, Disney bought Fox Media brand. So they now were able to reincorporate and buy back the rights to not only the Fantastic Four, but X-Men and All Mutants again. So now these characters have a lot more viability to actually come back into the MCU, which is kind of harken to a lot of people asking questions about potentially, are they going to reinvite some mutants into the world here to start seeding them in some sort of way, shape, or form. And I think it's a possibility because, again, there's a lot of mutant characters that were in the Avengers at the end of the day. I mean, like, everyone... The Avengers, everyone at one point was in the event. Has been in the Avengers.
But I think as they line up now, you can have a cast of too many characters.
Oh, yes.
And as they line up now, you've got enough people in the Avengers, all by themselves, that there's a lot of storyline to be told there.
I think there's more than enough room for the Avengers storylines, and I would kind of... What I would really like to see eventually happen here, and I think they're kind of just waiting on the last sets of X-Men films to kind of dry out a little bit before reintroducing it. Kind of like how like the new Star Wars prequels didn't really start coming out until like 2015.
Yeah.
And they hadn't been around since 2003, really. But by that point, again, 2012 was when they bought out Lucas at that point, Lucasfilms.
Well, but I think so. The Star Wars sort of fill in storylines. Rogue One, as example. Solo not as well. Just yeah.
I kind of like Solo in a certain way. Like, it's perfectly fine until you remember. Oh yeah, this is a Star Wars movie. If we were just watching like this dashing young hero, if we were just watching Han Solo as itself and forgot the fact that it's the Millennium
Falcon. It feeds
Falcon,
into something else.
It feeds into other stuff.
If you see it as its own standalone.
Yes.
Okay. I thought that Star Wars did a good job with creating things that could be standalone.
Yes.
That you didn't have to know the rest of the story in order to appreciate that movie, but the movie fit in the genre.
Yeah, and Marvels have done a really great job of that as well with a lot of their like again, like you look at Ant-Man and
Ant-Man, I'm sorry.
I love Ant-Man.
Because he just...
It doesn't look like he should be there, and yet he is there.
And he holds his own.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have characters like Ant-Man again, where like when that movie came out, like we were well into Phase 2 with a lot of... or actually just, it's right after Age of Ultron, actually.
Yeah.
And it's a movie where like...
It works on its own.
It very much works on its own. They've done a really good job of that here as well. Like Captain Marvel stands on her own. I think the first Spider-Man, if you forget the fact that he was in the Avengers movies, like it does stand semi-well on its own.
I didn't like Captain Marvel's role in
Endgame.
Yeah.
I don't either, but what I have to remind myself is that the Captain Marvel of current Marvel continuity is very much of the same caliber as Superman is of the DC continuity.
You don't get to come in at the last moment.
Not so much you don't get to come in at the last moment, but so much as that the character really...
kind of arrogant.
Well, not just arrogant, but like arrogant and very powerful at the end of the day. I mean, like if she to have her.
But she's busy someplace else. She can't always be there, you know.
Yeah, and that's how they kind of write her out until the very end. And when she gets there, like she's very much the turning point in that entire fight for a while.
She's the decision maker of sorts, but it just
it feels like a wasted opportunity.
Well, and it feels like devaluing everybody else who was there from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be interesting where her stories lie in the future here as well, because they clearly take place outside of Earth, and they don't interact with Earth at all.
And you know, you used to think I wouldn't like that. The whole sort of this is taking place someplace else. But Guardians of the Galaxy got me over that.
Yeah,
because Guardians of the Galaxy takes you to delightfully
other worlds.
Yeah,
and they're very, very cool whenever you're going there, and it looks like. And again, it's always one of these things like if there's a huge ensemble cast and it looks like a lot of people are having fun, you know, like I want to have fun too.
Yeah.
So it's the main reason why.
To me, they are the most fun of the series.
Mm-hmm. And now they have
and they're just so lovely snarky. Yeah.
And they have now they have Fat Thor too, which I'm sure the entire portion that I'm.
Fat Thor, but now what are you going to do with Nebula and the sister?
I imagine that the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie will partly be taking place where the ongoing joke is going to be getting Thor thin again.
Right.
So there's going to be a number of cases where like Thor wants to go drinking or wants to go snack, and they'll be like snatching it out of his hands or being like, "Come on, man, you got to do more. You got to do more exercise here." Sort of snarkiness there. But the primary bulk of that movie is going to be finding Gamora.
Yeah.
You know, because again, the Gamora that we knew from the original MCU died at the hands of Thanos to get the soul
he could
gem.
realize his
And the new Gamora that we have now is from from the past now. So,
and she has that moment. She's just him, really him.
Really, I chose him. It's like. Yeah. Is that or it was an idiot or a tree? So, or it's surprised that she didn't.
So they've got to fall back in love.
Yeah. So, ideally, if either fall back in love.
I was hoping that would be the story.
I hope so too.
A story.
Mm-hmm. So again, a lot of fans have been kind of wondering here at the end of the day, how are we going to get mutants into the MCU? And I really do think actually that what's probably going to happen here, and I would wager this probably happens sometime in 2027 or 2028 here, is that Doctor Strange goes into an alternate reality, because again his next upcoming movie is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse,
right?
And sets up the opportunity or possibility that they go to a world where Iron Man, Captain America, Scarlet Witch, or Black Widow, and all these other characters exist.
So a sort of a netherworld heaven.
Well, not so much that they exist, but so much as that, like, you know, we've gone to a different reality, or reality has somehow been warped and changed, and so we can get back to. So now we have mutants in the world, and they're interacting with potential Marvel stuff here at the end of the day.
Could be fun.
You know, and that's a possibility on how they might consider doing that, because one of the big deals with Wanda here is that, and let's talk about Wanda here at this point here. Okay. So, born to a Max Eisenhart, who we better know as Magneto.
Oh, okay.
She is the mutant daughter of Magneto, along with her brother Pietro. Now, they didn't originally know their father was Magneto until many, many years later. And so they were technically orphans who grew up on this kind of magical mountain with other gypsies, and were basically kind of, that was their life for the most part.
Raised by a tribe.
Raised by a tribe here. And it was, and eventually, as a result of their powers starting to become more active, that they got saved by Magneto at one point and then pledged their loyalty to him, who helped train them how to use their powers better. And so Wanda and Pietro were very much a part of the Brotherhood of Mutants, which is Magneto's sort of... Now, we have to remember, and I don't know if we talked about this enough when we talked about X-Men, but I think X-Men is a good thing, a good tangent to go off onto, is that mutants are known as Homo superius. Not Homo sapiens, but Homo superius.
Okay.
And Magneto believes that it's the next evolutionary line in humans, and that as a result, that mutants are the superior race to humans and should be running the world. So he's very much a terrorist in that particular aspect at the end of the day.
His own little Thanos.
Yeah, he's his own little Thanos. But I mean, like, he doesn't want to kill humanity. He just wants to rule over humanity because he believes his race of other mutants are of the superior race here, and he's very much made a point of saying, you know, like, I don't want to hurt any other mutants. Like, why are you guys fighting me? We should be working together to rule the planet here because we are the rightful rulers at this point. Versus, you know, the X-Men are very much like, no, let's work together because there's a lot more of them than there are of us. Yeah. So, but Wanda and Pietro were initially big supporters of Magneto here, and at one point they left, and when they left, this was also at a point in which the Avengers didn't have a lot of teammates on there. And so Captain America decided needing to form a team, recruited both Wanda and Quicksilver, and also a young individual known as Hawkeye, I believe his name is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
because I'm a fan of Hawkeye, as you know.
Yeah, so he wasn't actually originally a part of the Avengers at all. He was actually a bad guy of... He was actually like an agent of this Black Widow initially, who was this...
He becomes so dark after the snap.
Oh my goodness, so well, I mean, like, can you blame him?
I can't, except it's just not... I don't know where I would have expected him to go, but that wasn't it.
Yeah. But I like the way that he...
I think it worked really well. Yeah.
So...
Pulling him back from that.
Oh, yeah, no, again, that scene in which it's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do what? Don't give me hope.
Yeah.
You know, because he's a guy that has literally nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So at this point here, Wanda joins with the Avengers, and both Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are longtime good guy members of the Avengers for a very long period of time. The two are relatively inseparable, though, as twins. Like, they rarely go far away from each other.
But it's WandaVision.
Yes. So, speaking of the Vision, Wanda has a relationship with Vision at a certain point here. And they have... and to talk about Vision, we'll talk about him here in just a moment here, just to keep it the timeline.
So Vision is a being.
Huh?
Vision is a being.
Vision is what they call a Synthoid, and it's different from a robot and slightly different from an android, because what Vision has, according to the comic books, is that there was original... Now, when I say the Human Torch, we usually think of the Fantastic Four character, the Human Torch.
Yeah.
Well, in World War II, there was an android known as the Human Torch, and which is very much modeled after, which the later Fantastic Four modeled their Human Torch off of.
Okay.
And the android was made by this guy named Ian Horton or Philip Horton, I can't remember which. And I apologize, I should have added that to my notes here. But like the Human Torch was this really kind of super sentient, android at the end of the day. Ultron, when Ultron wanted to create a bad guy as a way to sort of corner the Avengers here. Now, Ultron being a creation of a character named Hank Pym, same guy who was Ant-Man. Hank Pym in this world is a super genius of that's even smarter than Tony Stark is.
But in a different way.
No. In like almost every conceivable way.
Really?
Yeah, like he's none of the because again, like he builds robots, he builds super advanced AI. Where Tony Stark is a really ingenious and industrial sort of person that creates his armor to help him at this point. Hank Pym is this industrialist sort of genius that has built stuff to avoid having to do the fighting on his own. But it's literally also where like the Hank Pym or the Pym particle comes from as well, that shrinks people up and down to different sizes here.
Allows us to Ant-Man.
Yeah, I mean, in Marvel continuity, in the original comic book continuity, like it's Hank Pym, then Stark, and then other people down, and then like the Beast and other people down the line.
Okay.
You know, but the Hank Pym is considered like the smartest guy in the world, and second only to Tony Stark. And Tony Stark would be higher if it weren't for the fact that Tony Stark has money and likes to be a playboy at the same time.
He has other interests.
Yeah, so that's really the only thing kind of holding him back. But so the Vision himself is a Synthoid made of, so Ultron, who was again was the AI created by Hank Pym, steals the Human Torch's remains from Professor Horton, and one of the big things that was a part of the Human Torch was that it had something called the Horton cells. Now, Synthoids are pretty much undistinguishable from humans, with the exception that they're built using these Horton cells at the end of the day that mimic.
But they are AI.
They are AI. They are robots at the end of the day, but their organs are built using the using this technology this Horton cells at the end of the day, which gives them lifelike skin, muscles, and things of that nature. So using the body of the android body of what was the Human Torch from World War II, these Horton cells, and a gem called the Solar Gem, which is mimic to what we would consider the Mind Gem here. They created Vision, which was meant to be an envision of what Ultron wanted to be at the end of the day.
Age of Ultron.
Yes. So the Vision was originally set to be this bad guy for the Avengers, and eventually was meant to be a double agent for Ultron, with the sense that Ultron would use the Vision as a sleeper agent to eventually either bring himself back at certain points, or to rewrite history, or to get back into power. So he kind of slowly manipulate the Vision into doing stuff that he didn't know he was really doing at the end of the day, or subconsciously doing. But to go back to both Wanda and Vision here, like they had a relationship for a long period of time, and now, unfortunately, Vision can't give birth to children at the end, or Wanda can't have children with him
Vision,
at all.
Yeah.
So through a weird storyline here, they actually magically, like, she got pregnant and gave birth to two twins named Tommy and Billy, whose powers actually mimic both the Scarlet Witch's and Quicksilver's powers, and that one of them is super fast and the other one has magical sort of witch-like qualities and abilities. And I'll explain their powers here in a little bit, because they're both kind of weird relationships here. But those children were actually parts of what was the Marvel Satan, known as Mephisto. So Marvel has a Satan, or a demon-esque character. His name Mephisto. Mm-hmm. This is the same guy who gives Ghost Rider his powers.
Okay, so I just want to point out that when you have bad guys, you frequently put M's on them. You have Mysterio,
mm-hmm.
Magneto, Mephisto,
mm-hmm.
Maleficent, different genre, but hey, proves my point.
Bad guys.
Yeah.
So again, these children were were parts of Mephisto's powers, and when he decided he wanted all of his powers back, he basically blinked the children out of existence. I know.
What's wrong?
Yeah, and unfortunately Wanda had a lot of turmoil over it. Somebody came in and actually clouded her mind to forget the children at the end of the day. It's also slightly during this point as well, just like a year or two later, where the Vision gets kidnapped and deconstructed. It's like when you see the picture that I found online, I'll have to find it. I'll have to include it in the podcast notes here. Is a strewn out over this table, like flat almost.
Oh.
and as a result, he gets rebuilt by Tony Stark and Hank Pym, but in the process of rebuilding him, he loses his humanity. So he goes back to being kind of a robot, and he's also the skin that was also on the Vision as well, which is red kind of suit skin.
Yeah,
that's unfortunately been damaged, and so he's this white sort of neutral looking Vision for a period of time. It's explained in the comic books that that the solar gem absorbed other people's memories and souls almost, that gave Vision his humanity at the end of the day, and that in the process of rebuilding him here, those people that were part of his memories and soul of Vision had been brought back to life. One of those characters being Wonder Man.
Wonder Man.
Yeah, I don't have time to go into him because it's a weird sort of thing.
Okay.
That character had been brought back to life, and so he didn't want to have his memories given back to Vision here at the end of the day because he felt it was an invasion of his soul.
Oh.
So like he had like moral objections to it. Now eventually, Vision, what we kind of consider this is the second Vision here now. Because again, like the ship of the Argonauts here, like if you take all the wood pieces out, is it the same ship at the end of the day here?
Okay.
Even though it's built in the same way, but if it doesn't have any,
he's lost his humanity.
Yeah, so he loses his humanity. He gains it back by absorbing other kind of memories and souls, so he gets back his own kind of stuff here. But him and Wanda eventually,
it's not the same thing.
Not the same, no.
Yeah.
And him and Wanda eventually kind of split up here, and so leading up to Wanda's big thing here, because this is really the event that Wanda's most well known for here. Mm-hmm. Somebody mentions Wanda's kids, which triggers her memory and makes her go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Not in the sense of, a straitjacket around, a straitjacket hugging a padded room, but her powers go crazy and go out of her control. Part of what ends up happening here is that she lashes out at a bunch of different heroes where she can't control her powers. One of those heroes is the Vision, who literally takes a Quinjet, which is their kind of flying transport stuff, crashes it into the Avengers mansion, and Vision very much makes a point of saying, "I'm sorry, I don't have any control over me right now," and Vision ends up releasing miniature versions of Ultron that get out, so that respawns Ultron. And he gets literally ripped in half by the She-Hulk. Like, right down the middle, just rips him in half in order to stop him.
There's a She-Hulk.
Yes.
Did not know this.
Oh, she is awesome.
Okay.
So you remember how the Hulk was in Endgame?
Yeah.
Imagine that, but, like, it's this, like, really so the She-Hulk, I forget what her actual name is, but she is the cousin of Peter who's the Hulk here? Bruce Banner. So she's the cousin of Bruce Banner. During some sort of incident in which she gets hurt, she gets a blood transfusion from Bruce Banner, as he's the only person with relative with similar blood to her. Well, as a result, she gets gamma radiation from his blood and turns into the She-Hulk. But unlike Bruce Banner, where he's this 8 foot tall, 9 foot tall, monstrous, mess. The She-Hulk, and the Hulk can't remember his own humanity at that point. He's Neanderthalish. The She-Hulk actually not only remembers everything about her life, but she goes from kind of being this kind of geeky, nerdy sort of girl to this super hot, super sexy, the buffest, kind of gym person out there. And she also again becomes 6, I think it's 6'7", 6'8" in height as well.
Tall.
Do you remember a wrestler back in the day called Chyna?
Yes, I actually do remember Chyna.
There was talks of her being the She-Hulk for a period of time.
Ah.
So kind of like that, but taller and a lot more outgoing and flirty even.
Okay.
The She-Hulk is awesome. She's getting her own TV. She's getting her own Marvel TV series on Disney Plus here as well.
Very cool.
So I don't know when that's happening. I think it's happening sometime 2022 most likely. But she's going to have her own series. It's going to be awesome because she's a lawyer, and she goes to court in like very revealing tops and outfits, professional attire.
Yeah.
As the She-Hulk, because she can't transform back and forth like Bruce Banner does at all. She just stays as She-Hulk the entire time.
Oh. Okay.
So it's this huge green person walking around, and she's awesome. She really is just awesome.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. But at this point here again, Vision's been ripped in half. They rebuild him into a third Vision, who just goes to She-Hulk and apologizes. Like, I'm really sorry we did that.
Yeah.
That this happened. And She-Hulk apologized as well. It's like, I'm sorry I destroyed you. And Vision's very much of like, no. I understand why you did it.
Yeah.
It's I get it. I understand.
I get it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But in the meantime here now, Wanda has actually been after these events here. Magneto comes in to go save Wanda at this point and takes her to Professor X with the intention of like helping her control her powers. Famously, we have to remember that Professor X did the same thing with Jean Grey. Jean Grey had this phenomenal psychic powers that threatened to rip her and other people apart entirely. And it was Professor X that actually put in mental blockers into her that would limit her power and growth. So that way, because as a very young teen, she could do amazing stuff here. But it was threatened to herself and other people as well because she couldn't control her powers.
Yeah.
So the idea was to take her to take Wanda to Professor X here, Xavier, at the end of the day, to do something similar. And it came actually to discussion of, I can't control her powers at all. They're too chaotic. Should we kill her to stop her?
Oh, that's mean.
Yes. And it's during these events that she learns this and instigates her most famous reality warping of all time, known as the House of M. So the House of M is a big, multi-part, sort of huge crossover event in Marvel that basically said that basically flipped the dynamic of humans and mutants. So mutants were now the most prominent species on Earth, and they were living like this most idyllic, perfect version. So like Magneto was the ruler of the world, Professor Xavier could walk, Cyclops could see again. All these different characters had just like the perfect lives now. We have to remember that Captain Marvel was Miss Marvel at the time, who was this alcoholic it was this drunken, alcoholic sort of person that was trying to get over herself. She was leading a great life. It's actually the House of M coming out of the House of M that really kind of makes Miss Marvel think, well, I could have done that in real life. I'll do that. And that's how she becomes Captain Marvel instead. Everyone's been brought back. People have been brought back to life. Wanda's got her kids again. And it's just perfect. Everything's the way everyone would like it to. I mean, Spider-Man is back with Aunt May is younger, and he's got Gwen Stacy is back as well. Captain America is not around, but he has gone back in time, and he is happy. He never got frozen and rethought out centuries, years and years later, decades later. Everyone's leading the most idyllic life. But some people remember that this isn't the right way. One of those individuals is Wolverine, because of the way his body works is that it's a healing factor, but it also heals his mind as well. So he's partly resistant to psionic and telepathic suggestions and stuff as well.
Okay.
And there's another actual mutant which actually is able to negate some of these powers. And keep in mind, even Magneto doesn't realize this is actually happening. He's painted throughout the entire comic as being the leader of the leader of all the mutants at this point. But he doesn't even know that the reality's ever changed at all. This is just how it always has been. Although the comic gives you the impression that, like, he knows and he's manipulating Wanda to do it. Come to find out when Magneto gets his powers back that it was actually Quicksilver that did this. Quicksilver who gave the idea to Wanda that said, you should make your own version where you got your kids again.
Where you could be happy.
Where you could be happy, yeah.
Yeah.
Magneto is very upset about this and actually kills Quicksilver. But we have to remember that we're in Wanda's reality sort of at the end of the day here. So she's able to bring back Quicksilver back to life. And she basically, like, chastises everybody for trying to ruin her happiness at the end of the day. We have to remember that one of the reasons Marvel was really popular as a comic book series is that it literally took digs at its characters all the time. Their characters are dramatically flawed, and they would poke a lot of those holes all the time in their characters as far as why they were flawed and how those flaws manifested themselves. There's a character. One of my favorite characters in Star Trek is named Miles O'Brien, and there's whole episodes where this character is called "Kick Miles O'Brien" episodes, where you put Miles O'Brien in like these horrible situations and watch as he, being a perfect idyllic person or as a good person, comes out of it somehow changed and warped by it. You torture the character because he's a good guy at the end of the day. Similar character that Wanda has been somewhat tortured by writers in the past. Miss Marvel is very much a famously tortured character at certain points. But basically Wanda like chastises everybody over how of what's going on. It's like, I gave you guys everything you guys ever wanted and you still weren't happy, and I've tried to do everything to help you guys here. So she ends House of M, so everything goes back to normal, but she whispers 3 little words: no more mutants. So, and now mind you, House of M happens in about 2005, 2006. After coming out of House of M, those 3 little words basically rewrit all of a lot of the humanity, and at this point here, it took the mutant population down to only 10% of what it had been before. Because before there was all these mutants kind of running around with powers and everything, it depowered all these different mutants. It also basically, actually halted the X gene, which is what gives mutants their powers. And so in theory, there was never going to be any more children that would be born going forward that would have the X gene. So there would be no more mutants at a certain point here. Now, eventually what ended up happening was that there were, in the X-Men continuity, there's a mutant that could give people back their powers. Famously, Cyclops didn't have powers for a while, and then after coming in contact with this one mutant, he got his powers back. Similar with some other mutants. But for the most part, a lot of mutants stayed depowered for a long time and actually disappeared from comics. Now, eventually, due to some reality manipulation, again, the X gene started appearing more frequently again, so you get more mutants. But there was a period of time where...
But they have to crossmate to do that.
No, it could be anybody.
It could be anybody, okay.
Yeah, and famously, it's a lot of parents that aren't mutants who give birth to mutants. And it's not even said that 2 mutants having children together will actually have a mutant child at the end of the day. It's the same kind of, if you remember back in high school and genes, it's that same sort of recessive gene sort of element.
So we're back to Mendelssohn and the Sweet Peas.
Yeah. So from here, Wanda is, Vision and Wanda continue to kind of exist. Wanda is very much less involved with the Avengers, as Vision is more obviously with the Avengers. And at a certain point here, Wanda actually discovers that, this actually places a curse on her family, and in order to prove a point to Magneto, who is trying to stop her from whatever she's doing. And it come to find out that it actually doesn't affect Magneto, only affects her and Quicksilver. And that's how she realizes that Magneto is actually not her father, and that she's actually not a mutant at all. So that weird mountain that I was talking about beforehand.
Yeah.
That somehow mountain is led by another...
With the gypsies.
With the gypsies, is led by another character who I can't recall his name immediately, and I forgot to write his name down. But this guy manipulates the genes of other people, of other creatures on the mountains. Who's actually created human hybrid animal things, not unlike the island of Dr. Monroe.
Yeah, I was going to say, very Faustian.
Mm-hmm. At a certain point here, it's actually revealed that the birthing mother and the midwife for both Pietro and Wanda was a cow woman named Bulva.
Ha ha ha! I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she makes a weird cameo in WandaVision too, actually, which is kind of funny. She's the fictional mascot for the milk in the series.
Okay.
So
that's cute.
Yeah, there's a lot of cute little nods and Easter eggs if you know what you're looking for in there. So what's eventually revealed here actually is that Wanda's actually a witch. She has similar magical powers on the same lines of.
Do tell me there's a Bewitched episode.
No.
Oh, that's too bad.
Well, again, depending how you look at it.
Okay.
Because again, they're mixing and matching a lot of genres here. But so Wanda herself is a magical person, not unlike Doctor Strange. And what's unique about Wanda is that she controls something called chaos magic, which is how you get to the whole reality manipulation and causality sort of stuff here. She's trained now in a bunch of standard kind of magical stuff, from like levitation, astral projection, kind of the same hallmarks of what Doctor Strange has. Mm-hmm. But she has this hyper focus in what is known as chaos magic. When we speak about her powers, Wanda's original powers were known as hexes, and so what she would do, she would put a hex on somebody, and negative stuff would happen based off whatever hex she did. It's kind of like curses, I guess.
Okay.
So, like, she would put curses on people with the intention of that disrupting their power, either disrupting their powers or making them slip and fall or being unable to hit other stuff, basically to her own advantage. At the end of the day, here, and she was originally thought to be a mutant because, again, like back in that day, I mean, like magic wasn't a well-known thing here except for Doctor Strange, and basically, like any sort of weird sort of happening was obviously, oh, that's a mutant. That's a mutant. I know a mutant when I see one. That's a mutant. We see a mutant right over there. There's a mutant.
Yeah.
So that kind of logic. And so Wanda at this particular point in the comics is more of is not as prominent because she's not really an Avenger. She's more of the magical realm now. And she pops up quite a bit in future Doctor Strange stuff here, and it's actually thought that Scarlet Witch will be the main antagonist for Doctor Strange's next major big movie when it comes out in 2022.
So she's going to be a bad guy?
Potentially.
Okay.
Don't know all the details of that here just yet. Okay. Vision.
Adore Doctor Strange.
Oh, I love Doctor Strange.
The look, everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, Benedict Cumberbatch was the perfect.
Yeah.
I miss his British accent, but I mean, like, I'm okay with that.
It's good in a number of things.
Oh my goodness, so good. When we get to Vision's powers is actually kind of interesting, where his Horton cell, so he has the solar gem, which allows him to project beams at the end of the day, both out of the crystal and then out of his eyes and hands. The gem actually powers and holds. The gem itself is is the powers of a human brain, but 100 times faster. So as you can imagine, Vision can make very large calculations much quicker than a normal human would. And then what's interesting about his body is that his Horton cells, which kind of control his body, allow him to change the density of his body. So this is how Vision can be really, really super hard, but at the same time, things can pass through him, because he can change the density of his body at will. Also, should make a point here of saying that at a certain point here, Vision actually creates his own family of Synthoids. So he's got a wife, a daughter, and a younger son that he purposely built in order to. It's an entire comic book series called The Visions, in which he's trying to actually figure out humanity on a greater level. His daughter is actually apparently really cool from what I've heard, as she takes on kind of the more Vision-esque sort of role in younger team-ups that they have. Mm-hmm. And so it will be interesting to kind of see what comes out of this at the end of the day. So WandaVision in of itself is supposed to be this sitcom-esque sort of stuff between Wanda and Vision leading a recently married life, I guess, is the best way to describe it.
Okay. And which Vision is this? Original Vision?
I don't...
Reformatted Vision.
I don't know how to explain that for you.
Okay.
Because it's... I know the answer, but I don't want to cloud your mind going into it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
So...
I will understand later.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So,
all
the episodes of WandaVision are all available on Disney+. They're roughly about a half hour or so long each. Not unlike, I think, The Mandalorian at the end of the day.
Okay.
But I know The Mandalorian's episodes tend to be more in the 35 to 40-minute range. WandaVision is very much of the 30-minute variety.
Okay.
With some... and again, one of these things, don't fast forward through the credits. There are stuff that happens in the credits occasionally.
Oh, okay.
So
good to know. Because otherwise,
yeah.
Yeah.
So going into the series here, there's a lot of people that were expecting it to be a partly of House of M, a partly thing of Visions, and it's interesting to see, does this warp all of reality, or is it a limited sort of reality, sort of bending?
But they're having the happy life that Wanda would have liked to have had.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's where you get kind of the House of M inspired elements of it here. And so the series is hopefully going to dive in a little bit more into Wanda's powers and abilities, because again, as we know him in the MCU right now, again, Wanda is basically just this person who's been altered by the Mind Stone and has both telekinetic and telekinesis powers. That's moving objects with your mind, and then being able to
persuade people,
through your mind.
The Jedi mind talk.
Yeah. Basically, the powers of like moving objects and Professor X at the same time.
Yeah.
And then Vision obviously is a vibranium created android who previously powered by the Mind Gem, and without the Mind Gem doesn't really have any way of being powered at the end of the day. So it'll kind of go into what happened as a Vision, because again, remember that Vision himself died twice in front of Wanda, actually. So the first time Wanda purposely killed him in the events of the end of Infinity War in order to destroy the Mind Gem and save the universe here at the end of the day from Thanos.
Yeah.
Well, Thanos at this point had the Time Gem and basically just rewound time and brought Vision back, knocked Wanda away, and just went over to Vision. It's like yoink, and pulled out the Mind Stone out of his head, and killed him again in front of Wanda.
Yeah. Very sad.
Yeah. It's unknown what happened to the Vision after that. It's assumed that he got collected by his parts, where his body was collected by the Avengers and brought back to an Avengers facility for safekeeping, or whether they buried him or not, it's unknown. Wanda, for all of her extensiveness, we see her when she comes back at the end of Endgame, to basically just wreck Thanos for a few minutes, for a moment or two.
Don't blame her.
Nope, don't blame her. And then there afterwards, like, she's there at the memorial for Tony Stark, and then we don't see her any time after that.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting here to see, like, where all these characters are going forward here now. Again, I mean, like, now clearly we have Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which got sidelined, and production on that stopped for about a year. And so hopefully it's going to come out later on this year. And we're thinking probably sometime in either late summer, either in the summer or fall, that we haven't seen any trailers for it just yet.
Yeah.
So maybe waiting until the very end of the year.
Well, and I noticed in our neighborhood, theaters have opened back up for 25% capacity or 100 people, whichever is less.
Yes.
So the indoor theaters in Santa Clara County, California, are right now open. Kind of.
Yeah, I have personal objections to that. I still think, like, let's just be safe and go a little longer. But I can understand from a lot of different vantage points that, like, these are businesses that are struggling to stick around. I mean, hey, my old job basically filed for bankruptcy here just within the last day, and for a lot of these businesses here, like not having people, you can't run a boutique if nobody can come into the store and buy anything.
Well, but then you have the flip side of it. At 25% capacity, can they afford to operate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you afford to operate with 25%, occupancy? Does that mean 25% staff as well? Because you have to have a certain number of staff to run anything.
Well, you make a bunch of money off of the concession stands, and at 25%, can you staff the concession stands?
Do you even have concession stands at that point?
Yeah.
Because again, I mean, a lot of the part of the movie here is not just selling you a $15 ticket at the end of the day. It's also about the concessions and buying other stuff while you're there.
Buying $20 worth of popcorn and soda.
God, remember in the day when that wasn't, when you could get that all for
Yep.
Oof.
Oh, don't even.
I know.
I remember 50-cent tickets. So. Yeah. Yep.
So, so it'd be interesting to see, because again, what's been interesting here now is that that with the advent of Disney Plus here, and clearly the Mandalorian has shown that this model can work.
Right.
That Marvel is going to be making a lot more TV series out of their, not necessarily what I would call legacy Avengers, but the characters that are that have been around for a while. So characters like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier have their own series. There's some new series coming out that'll have again like the She-Hulk. Miss Marvel is going to be coming out. They've ended Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. here now, and it'll be interesting to see how they show the Phase 4 and the continued Marvel continuity here, and what stuff gets TV series versus what will get movies at the end of the day. Like, I'm fairly certain that Fantastic Four is going to be a TV series at the end of the day, rather than a movie. Or if it is, it starts as a movie and then moves into a TV series.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that you get a lot of crossover now. So even though it's a Spider-Man movie, it has Tony Stark.
Oh yeah.
And that sort of thing. You get a lot of crossover now, and I think it's interesting. It seems like there's like a ratio that you get 3 individual movies and 1 everybody movie, and then 3 individual movies and then 1 everybody movie.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, so like
that's sort of been the trend.
Yeah, so you get like 1 or 2, you get like 2 or 3 movies that are just single individual movies, and you get like an ensemble cast movie. So the big one that we've noticed here right now is that there's no major Avenger movie scheduled for any time soon.
So we're not getting an ensemble movie.
Well, we're not getting like a huge crossover kind of style sort of stuff here. Now, what's always been kind of the real benefit of having these movies is that you don't really need to know where Thor is at any particular point to be able to watch a Thor movie. Like having watched the previous one, you're rewarded by what's going on and that the characters and kind of the happenings of what's happening. But
you're familiar.
But you're familiar with everything. But I mean, like, you don't absolutely have to know who Thor is. Like if you had watched Thor years ago and then watched the second Thor movie, The Dark World, like, oh, hey, yeah, isn't that, that's Thor's girlfriend, right? Yeah. And where was she in the last movie? In Ragnarok? Who cares? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. They stand alone.
They stand alone really well, and they've always left their world building to kind of like the side, not necessarily the sidelines, but not quite so overt, like they're typically either offhanded comments or Easter egg nods or like subtle mentions at the end of the day, and they don't go out of their way to kind of rewrite a lot of the history unless it plays an important point, and then that's the status quo for all of that kind of continuity. Like when Winter Soldier basically said that S.H.I.E.L.D. had Hydra members in it and they disbanded S.H.I.E.L.D. at the end of the day, it was like, oh, okay, well, now that's the case going forward, that there's Hydra agents everywhere still, and that S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist anymore, and now that S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist, they're not leading the Avengers, it's just Tony Stark leading the Avengers now.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to kind of see, how they do this here. Like, I'm very curious about the Falcon and Winter Soldier, because the Falcon's supposed to be the new Captain America. But it would obviously...
He hands it off. Yeah.
But it would obviously potentially be even better in the hands of Bucky Barnes, who has been with Captain America for a lot longer, and who doesn't already have kind of his own theming to him already outside of
to me, it was such an interesting choice, because you took a character who had some very dark sides
mm-hmm.
and made him Captain America.
The Falcon, or...
Yeah.
Well, the Falcon doesn't have any dark elements
okay.
to him.
Maybe I'm confusing things.
This is the guy with the wings on his arms.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got any dark sides, but he's just a very much of a... he's a sidekick or a buddy to Captain America. Like, kind of like what is kind of keeps him rooted at the end of the day.
Yeah.
As where I think Bucky Barnes would probably be the most logical guy to make Captain America, but clearly his former Soviet-esque sort of life where he was controlled kind of limits his potential for that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see that series, which gets started on March 19th, and again, so this is one of the few downsides with Disney Plus, that they were actually releasing it like TV shows once a week.
Yeah.
So instead of releasing it all at once, like other streaming services like Netflix does, they're just releasing it piecemeal, week by week by week. So it incentivizes you staying a member of their service for months on end.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's interesting because the new norm seems to be 8, 9, 10 episodes,
mm-hmm.
as opposed to what we think of as a series on network TV.
It was like 20 or 30 episodes.
20 to 26.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minus like a couple episodes in the middle of the holidays, potentially.
Yeah.
Always a Christmas episode or a Halloween episode, and then...
Yeah, you had seasonal episodes, and then
mm-hmm.
you had, 20, 22, 23 regular episodes. And so now these are, unless you're The Crown, and even The Crown, I think, is like 10 per season.
Yes.
Yeah. Your series is this shortened thing.
Yep. And I don't think that's necessarily like, if you don't need to spend 13 episodes and you only need 8 episodes, why not just do it in 8?
Well, yeah, and that's the other part of it, is it's very bingeable, because you could sit over a weekend and watch a whole thing.
Yeah, or at worst, you feel rewarded that you spent the last 40 minutes watching an episode at the end of the day. It's like, okay, I watched this, I feel good about this, let's go and make, I watched this and I made dinner and I ate dinner and then I came out of it and it's like, okay, now I can go back to doing whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very nice and a very easy way to watch it now.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if this is something that network TV emulates on any particular level at all.
Especially with what used to be miniseries.
Mm-hmm. So, the homework here this week is going to be watching WandaVision. There are 9 episodes, again, roughly about 30 to 35 minutes each.
Yep.
And we will talk about that when we come back next week. But so just so everyone knows, we'll have all the notes for all of our podcasts on our website at thenerdtutorialpodcast.com, where you can see all of our previous episodes and all the show notes for all that as well. I try to put in everything I talk about or all of my notes I prepare ahead of time is what's on the website at the end of the day.
Okay.
So, kind of what's all my notes going into it. And then we continue the conversation as well at our Facebook group at Facebook /Nerd Tutorial Podcast, all is one word. And then if you want to let me know about any future topics, ideas, or thoughts on future topics here, you can hit me up on Twitter at nerd_tutorial, where we follow all of our older topics that we've covered as well. So any sort of new news comes out, usually gets featured on that Twitter page as well. And if you have the opportunity to, please like and share this podcast here, and leave a review as well, because it helps us boost our members as well. We want to try to make sure we can have these kind of cool, nerdy topics for people to help educate other people who may not even be aware of them.
Who aren't nerdy themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on behalf of myself and my mom, we hope you guys stay safe out there in these weird times. And we'll see you guys again next time.
Bye.